So how many of you out there have ever been conned by a used car salesman? You caught yourself down in your luck in some tough times. You just needed something to get yourself back and forth to work every day. So you go down to the used car lot. They got a sign that says, buy here, pay here. Some old dude comes out with a cigar and tells you, this car over here is the one you need. Some little old lady just drove it to church on Sunday. I drove that car down to Florida. It run like a top. Same old stereotypical lines every time. And you take it for a test drive and he tells you it's a good one and you get it with no warranty. And then you get home and realize you got all kinds of problems. And when you take it to a mechanic, they take a look at it. They say, man, you should have really looked under the hood before you bought this. I've had it happen to me back when I was younger. I'm sure you have too at some point in your life. Well, that's exactly what's happening right now with Donald Trump after he bought JD Vance. He really should have looked under the hood, pun intended. He really should have looked under the hood of JD Vance and realized what he stood for, because now he's stuck with him. Normally what you do if you're running for office, you try to get somebody who's going to bring in people outside your base. That's the smart move. Donald Trump talks about how we got to protect our smart people, and he's the smartest guy ever. He had an uncle at MIT that was smart, but he pulled one of the most basic dumbass moves that you could pull as a presidential candidate. He picked somebody that was even more radical. He picked somebody that was only going to energize his base and do nothing to pull anyone from the outside in. It was an absolute stupid, catastrophic move on his part, but now he's stuck with it with no warranty. He can't take it back. He's just stuck with it, and he's got to figure out how to make it work. And while he's trying to figure out how to make it work with JD Vance, this clip right here resurfaces. Take a look.
Look, here's a situation. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion, in 2022 or 2000, let's say 2024. And then, every day, George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity. That's kind of creepy.
Health justice is when we exterminate working class black people.
Something like that could, that would be a really equity. Weird turn of events that could happen. Yes.
And it's like, if that happens, do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? Because it's really creepy. And, I'm pretty sympathetic to that, actually.
Yeah, Trump is going to have a really hard time weaseling his way out of this one, because there's the guy on the ticket with him saying that he would support a federal response to a woman going across state lines to get an abortion. So when Trump says we're going to throw it back to the states, we're just going to make it a states' rights issue. That's all we did. We just turned it back over to the states. There's his guy saying no. Regardless if we turn it back to the states, if someone goes across state lines, we need a federal response to that. So Trump is absolutely stuck with this now, and there's going to be a whole lot of people going to the polls in November, and the main issue they're going for is women and women's rights and women's reproductive health in this country. That's what's on the ballot in November, and that's what Trump's radical pick for VP is saying. And that's not the only thing he's saying. He also says that really the only people that should have any stake in the matter is people that have children. Take a look at this.
Go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power, you should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Now, people will say, and I'm sure the Atlantic and the Washington Post and all the usual suspects will criticize me about this in the coming days. Well, doesn't this mean that non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't this mean that parents get a bigger say in how our democracy functions? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he seems to have a real problem with people who don't have kids. And do you remember what he said about Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, and AOC? Compared them to childless cat ladies? Take a look at this.
Is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
And notice again how he said that he knows people out there will say this is unconstitutional, but we got to do it anyway. Trump said he has no problem terminating the Constitution, and there's his running mate saying the same thing. I don't care what the Constitution says. We're going to do it our way. And it's pretty funny to me how he brings out that only people with kids are the ones that should have a say in the thing, because if you actually study Project 2025, it talks about the American family, installing the American family at the forefront of America. And in that, it says that the men, the husbands, are the ones that should sit at the head of the table and have all the say. So what he's really saying when he says that is, guys like me are the only ones that should be allowed to have a say in the matter. That's what he's really saying. And it's also funny to me that the very people who wants to accuse us of grooming children are the same ones who says, let us install the American family. Let us make all the decisions for you and your children. Let us tell you what books that your kids can read. Let us tell you what rights your kids can have. If your kid comes out as gay or trans, we're going to make their life a living hell. If your daughter tries to have a child, we're going to make things as hard on her as possible. We're going to strip away every right she ever had. That's what they're saying, folks. And Trump is stuck with JD Vance. He can't weasel his way out of this one. He doesn't have someone over here who they can look at and go, well, you know, we might be voting for Trump, but at least he's got this guy with him. No, he's got someone even worse. I remember back when he was running in 2016, and I thought Mike Pence was extreme. I didn't like the guy at all. But there were people in my part of the world that were saying, well, he looks more presidential. I mean, you know, if something goes wrong with Trump, we got Pence. Can they really say that now? Because if something goes wrong with Trump, we got Vance, the guy that's going to be saying that the only people that should have a say are people that has kids, and actually only people who thinks like him. Don't ever be fooled by any of their rhetoric, because their rhetoric is straight up racist, it's straight up misogynistic, it's straight up xenophobic and homophobic. Their whole base is created on hate and cruelty and them calling the shots. So when he says these things, it might make some people in my part of the world feel warm and fuzzy inside, but what they don't realize is that if guys like JD Vance is calling the shots, none of us is going to have a shot in hell.